There's a test that doctors are now using in clinics from Boston to London to Sydney, and it takes less than 60 seconds. It doesn't involve blood work. It doesn't involve a machine. All it asks is this: can you stand on one leg for 10 seconds without holding on to anything? If you can, research following thousands of people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s has linked that simple skill to a significantly lower risk of death over the following decade. If you can't quite do it yet, stick around, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why that is, and more importantly, what you can do about it starting today, no matter your age. Because here's the truth: nobody tells you enough. Aging well isn't about the number of candles on your cake. It's about whether your body and brain can still do certain everyday things. And there are 5 specific abilities that tell you more accurately than almost anything else whether you're truly aging well or just aging. Today we're going through all 5 of them, one at a time, in plain language, with the science behind each one and simple ways to protect or even improve them, whether you're 60, 70, or pushing 80 and beyond. Before we get into it, I want to say something important. This video isn't about scaring anyone or making you feel like you're falling apart if you can't check every box. Aging is not a straight line, and everybody's body carries a different history of injuries, illnesses, and life circumstances. What this video is about is awareness. When you know what to watch for, you can catch small changes early, talk to your doctor with the right questions, and take small daily actions that genuinely add years of independence to your life. So let's start with the first ability, the one we just mentioned, because it might be the single most telling sign of all: balance. It sounds almost too simple to matter, but balance is one of the first things that quietly starts to slip as we get older, often years before anyone notices. Here's why it matters so much. Standing on one leg or even just walking steadily across a room requires your brain, your inner ear, your eyes, and dozens of small stabilizing muscles in your feet, ankles, hips, and core to all communicate with each other in real time, dozens of times per second. When any one of those systems weakens even slightly, your balance is often the very first thing to show it, long before you'd notice a problem doing something like climbing stairs or carrying groceries. That's exactly why doctors love using balance as an early warning signal. It's like a canary in the coal mine for your entire neuromuscular system. Now, why does this actually matter for your health beyond just looking a little wobbly? Falls. Falls are one of the leading causes of injury, hospitalization, and loss of independence for people over 65. A fall that might have just been embarrassing at 30 can mean a broken hip at 70. And unfortunately, a broken hip in later life can set off a cascade of complications that affect far more than just your leg. This is why maintaining balance isn't a small cosmetic issue. It's a genuine safeguard for your independence, your mobility, and honestly, your longevity. Here's some good news though. Balance is remarkably trainable at almost any age. Studies on people well into their 80s have shown measurable improvements in balance after just a few weeks of simple practice. You don't need fancy equipment. You can start by simply standing near a countertop or sturdy chair and lifting one foot slightly off the ground, holding for a few seconds, then switching sides. As that gets easier, you can try doing it without holding on, always with something nearby to grab if needed. Tai Chi, which has been studied extensively for fall prevention, combines slow, controlled movements with weight shifting, and it has consistently been shown in research to reduce fall risk in older adults. Even simply walking heel to toe like you're on a balance beam for a few minutes a day can make a real difference over time. The key with balance, more than almost any other physical skill, is consistency. A little bit most days beats an intense session once a month. Now let's move to the second ability. And this one might surprise you because most people never think about it as a health marker at all. Grip strength. That's right, how strongly you can squeeze your hand. It might sound like a strange thing to measure, but grip strength has become one of the most studied indicators in aging research over the past 2 decades, and for good reason. Large studies involving people across dozens of countries have found that grip strength correlates strongly with overall muscle mass, cardiovascular health, and even cognitive function. Think about that for a second. Your handshake might be quietly telling a story about your heart, your muscles, and your brain all at once. Why would something as simple as hand strength connect to so much? Part of the answer lies in how your body ages as a whole system rather than in isolated parts. When general muscle mass declines, a process doctors call sarcopenia, it tends to affect the whole body, and your grip strength is simply an easy, measurable window into that broader process. It's much easier to measure grip with a simple device called a dynamometer than to measure, say, the strength of your diaphragm or your heart muscle, but they tend to decline together. So grip strength has become sort of a stand-in, a proxy for your overall physical resilience. Beyond the science, though, think about what grip strength actually means in daily life. Opening a jar, carrying grocery bags, getting up off the floor using your hands for support, holding onto a railing tightly enough to catch yourself if you slip, buttoning a shirt, turning a stiff doorknob. These aren't dramatic, heroic tasks. They're the quiet, invisible foundation of everyday independence. And grip strength underlies almost all of them. If you're wondering how you're doing, here's a simple way to think about it. Can you open a new jar of pickles or pasta sauce without running it under hot water or asking for help? Can you carry 2 full grocery bags from the car to the kitchen in one trip without your hands aching or your grip giving out? These aren't scientific tests, but they're honest real-world signals. The encouraging part is that grip strength and the muscle mass behind it responds well to simple resistance training even later in life. You don't need to become a bodybuilder. Something as simple as squeezing a stress ball or a hand exerciser for a few minutes a day, or doing basic resistance exercises with light dumbbells or resistance bands a couple of times a week has been shown in research to meaningfully improve grip strength in older adults within just a matter of weeks. Even everyday activities like gardening, kneading dough, or carrying watering cans count toward this. The body doesn't know the difference between a gym and your kitchen. It just knows whether you're using your muscles regularly or not. Now, for the third ability, and this one is something almost everyone over 60 has thought about at some point, usually while getting up from a low couch or the floor, can you rise from a seated position on the floor to standing without using your hands, your knees, or anything else to push off from? This might sound like an oddly specific skill to build a whole segment around, but there's actually a well-known piece of research published years ago in a respected sports medicine journal that followed over 2,000 adults and found that the ability to sit down on the floor and stand back up without any support was strongly associated with lower mortality risk over the following years. People who scored well on this simple test tended to live longer than those who couldn't do it at all, even after accounting for age and other health factors. Why would something like that matter so much? Because rising from the floor without support requires a combination of leg strength, core strength, balance, flexibility, and coordination essentially all at once. It's like a full body report card condensed into a single movement. If you can do it smoothly, it suggests that several different systems in your body are still working together well. If you can't, it often points to a combination of weaker leg muscles, tighter hips, or reduced balance, which are all things worth paying attention to, and importantly, all things that can often be improved. Think about why this matters in real life too. If you ever fall, whether from tripping on a rug, slipping in the bathroom, or simply losing your balance while gardening, the ability to get yourself back up off the ground safely can be the difference between a minor scare and a major medical event where you're stuck on the floor, unable to move, sometimes for hours. That scenario is unfortunately common among older adults living alone, and it's part of why this ability matters so much beyond just convenience. If you try this test yourself, and please only do so carefully near something sturdy to hold if needed, and never if you have any joint replacement, recent surgery, or condition your doctor has warned you about, you'll get an honest sense of where you stand. If it's difficult right now, that's useful information, not something to be discouraged by. The good news again is that every component of this skill, leg strength, hip flexibility, core stability, and balance can be improved with regular gentle practice. Simple exercises like sit-to-stands from a chair, where you practice standing up without using your hands, gradually build the exact strength needed for this more advanced version. Gentle stretching for your hips and hamstrings, along with basic core exercises like modified planks or seated marches, all contribute directly to this ability over time. Let's move on to the fourth ability now. And this one is something most of us do every single day without thinking twice about it. walking speed. It might seem strange that something as ordinary as how fast you walk could be medically significant, but walking speed has actually earned a nickname among researchers. Some call it the sixth vital sign, right alongside things like blood pressure, heart rate, and temperature. Multiple large studies tracking older adults over many years have found that gait speed, meaning how quickly someone walks at their normal, comfortable pace, is a remarkably strong predictor of overall health outcomes, including risk of hospitalization, cognitive decline, and yes, longevity. Why does something so simple carry so much weight? Walking might feel automatic, but it actually requires an impressively coordinated effort from your cardiovascular system, your lungs, your muscles, your joints, your balance system, and your brain, all working in harmony dozens of times per minute, step after step. If any of those systems begin to falter, even subtly, your walking speed often reflects it before you consciously notice anything else. It's a bit like how a car's fuel efficiency can quietly reveal an engine problem before the check engine light even comes on. Researchers generally consider a walking speed of around 3 feet per second, or roughly 1 meter pers, to be a marker of healthy aging in older adults, though this varies somewhat by age and individual circumstances. And it's always worth discussing with your own doctor rather than comparing yourself to a strict number. In practical terms, this generally means being able to comfortably cross a street at a typical crosswalk within the time the signal allows. Something many of us don't think about until we're the one hurrying across with cars waiting. Here's an interesting fact that surprises a lot of people. Slower walking speed has been linked not just to physical decline, but to cognitive changes as well. Some researchers believe this connection exists because walking, despite feeling simple, actually uses a surprisingly large portion of brain real estate, coordinating attention, spatial awareness, and motor control simultaneously. So when walking speed slows down significantly, it may sometimes reflect subtle changes happening in the brain, not just in the muscles or joints. This is exactly the kind of finding that shows how connected our body and brain really are, and why doctors increasingly look at simple physical measures as windows into broader health. If you want to gently check in on your own walking speed, you don't need a stopwatch or a lab. Simply notice next time you're walking somewhere familiar. Whether you feel like you're keeping pace comfortably with people around you, whether you can cross the street within a normal signal cycle, or whether you've noticed yourself needing more rest breaks than you used to on walks you've done for years. These are gentle, honest self-checks, not diagnostic tools, but they can be useful conversation starters with your doctor if something feels different. The encouraging part, once again, is that walking speed responds well to regular movement. Studies have shown that older adults who engage in regular walking programs, even just 20 to 30 minutes most days, along with some basic strength training for the legs, tend to maintain or even improve their walking speed over time. It's one of those areas where consistent, moderate effort really does pay off, and it doesn't require anything dramatic. A daily walk around your neighborhood done consistently is genuinely one of the most powerful tools available for healthy aging, and it's completely free. Before we move on, let's clear up a common myth that trips a lot of people up when they think about walking speed and mobility in general. Many people assume that slowing down is simply an unavoidable part of getting older, something written into your genes that no amount of effort can change. But research tells a more hopeful story. While some decline in maximum speed is normal, studies consistently show that a large portion of the slowdown people experience is due to reduced activity levels and muscle disuse rather than aging itself. In other words, much of what people chalk up to just getting older is actually more closely related to becoming more sedentary over time. This distinction matters enormously because it means that a meaningful part of what feels like an inevitable decline is actually within your influence. Bodies that keep moving regularly, even at a modest pace, tend to hold on to their walking speed far better than bodies that gradually become more inactive, regardless of the number of years behind them. Another myth worth addressing here is the idea that once you notice yourself slowing down, it's essentially too late to do much about it. This simply isn't supported by the research. Studies involving previously sedentary adults in their 70s and even 80s have shown measurable improvements in walking speed after starting structured walking or strength programs, sometimes within just a few months. The body remains remarkably responsive to consistent movement at almost any age, which is genuinely encouraging news if you've been putting off getting more active because you assumed the window had already closed. Now, before we move to the fifth and final ability, let's pause for a moment because this next one is a little different from the others. The first four abilities we've covered are physical. This last one is cognitive, and in many ways, it might be the most important of all. The fifth ability is this: can you still learn something genuinely new? Not just recall old memories or perform familiar routines, but actually take in new information, practice a new skill, and improve at it over time. This might seem like an unusual thing to include in a list about physical aging, but stay with me because the science here is genuinely fascinating. For a long time, there was a widespread belief that the adult brain, especially the aging brain, was essentially fixed, unable to grow new connections or adapt in meaningful ways. We now know that's simply not true. Research into what scientists call neuroplasticity has shown that the brain retains a remarkable capacity to form new neural connections well into old age. People in their 70s and 80s have been shown in controlled studies to successfully learn new languages, new musical instruments, and new complex skills, sometimes performing comparably to much younger learners in certain measures, especially when it comes to depth of understanding and long-term retention. So why does the ability to learn something new matter so much as a marker of healthy aging? Because learning requires an impressive combination of attention, working memory, processing speed, and motivation, all functioning together. When someone can still sit down, focus, absorb new information, and notice themselves getting better at something over days or weeks, it's a strong sign that multiple cognitive systems are still functioning well and interacting properly. It's very different from simply having good memory for old, well-rehearsed information, which can sometimes remain intact even when other cognitive functions are declining. Active learning is a more dynamic, real-time test of your brain's current flexibility. There's also a protective angle here that researchers find especially compelling. Multiple long-term studies have suggested that people who regularly engage in novel, mentally challenging activities, things like learning a new language, taking up a musical instrument, or even learning to use new technology, tend to show a somewhat lower risk of cognitive decline later on compared to those who primarily stick to familiar, well-practiced routines. Scientists sometimes refer to this as building cognitive reserve, essentially giving your brain extra capacity and flexible pathways that may help it better withstand the natural changes that come with aging. It's a bit like how a city with many interconnected roads can better handle a closed street than a city with just one main road. More connections mean more alternate routes if one pathway becomes less efficient. Now, I want to be careful here because this isn't about turning your golden years into a stressful academic boot camp. The goal isn't grinding through flashcards out of fear. It's about genuine curiosity and gentle challenge. Learning a few phrases in a language you've always found interesting, trying a new recipe technique you've never attempted, picking up a musical instrument you always wished you'd learned as a kid, learning to use a new app on your phone to video call your grandchildren, taking up a new hobby like painting, woodworking, or even a new card game with slightly complex rules. All of these engage that same learning system in your brain, and all of them count. Here's a small encouraging fact that a lot of people find surprising. Struggling a little while learning something new isn't a bad sign. In fact, researchers who study learning have found that a certain amount of productive difficulty, sometimes called desirable difficulty, actually strengthens learning and memory formation more than material that feels effortless from the start. So if you try to learn something new and find it a bit challenging at first, that discomfort isn't evidence that you can't do it. It's often a sign that real learning is happening. So there you have it. 5 abilities that taken together paint a much more accurate picture of how well someone is truly aging than simply looking at their birth certificate. Balance, which reflects the coordination between your brain, inner ear, and muscles. Grip strength, which serves as a window into your overall muscular and cardiovascular health. The ability to rise from the floor without support, which combines strength, flexibility, and balance into one revealing movement. Walking speed, sometimes called the 6th vital sign, which reflects the harmony between your heart, lungs, muscles, and brain. And finally, the ability to still learn something genuinely new, which speaks to the ongoing flexibility and health of your brain itself. If you found yourself confidently checking off most or all of these, that's genuinely wonderful, and it's worth recognizing as a real accomplishment, not something to take for granted. Keep doing what you're doing, because clearly it's working. And if a few of these felt harder than you'd like, please don't take that as bad news. Take it as useful, actionable information. Every single one of these abilities can be improved with consistent, gentle effort, often starting with changes far smaller than people expect. Small daily practices, a few minutes of balance work, a bit of hand strengthening, gentle stretching, a short daily walk, and a little genuine curiosity applied to learning something new can meaningfully shift these numbers over weeks and months. That's not motivational fluff. That's what the research on aging consistently shows, again and again across countless studies and countless people. I also want to gently remind you that this video is meant to inform and encourage, not to diagnose. If you've noticed a real sudden change in your balance, your strength, your walking, or your memory and thinking, especially if it happened relatively quickly rather than gradually, please talk to your doctor. Sudden changes deserve professional attention because they can sometimes be early signals of something treatable. And catching things early almost always leads to better outcomes. Your doctor can also help you design a safe, personalized plan for improving any of these 5 areas based on your specific health history, medications, and any existing conditions, which is always safer and more effective than generic advice from any single video, including this one. What I hope you take away from today is something simple but powerful. Aging isn't something that just happens to you passively while you sit back and watch. There are specific, identifiable things your body and brain can still do that reflect genuine underlying health. And nearly all of them can be nurtured and strengthened with small, consistent, daily choices. You don't need to run a marathon or memorize a phone book to prove you're aging well. You just need to keep gently, consistently using the abilities that matter most: your balance, your strength, your mobility, and your curiosity. Because as it turns out, those quiet, everyday abilities may be telling a far bigger story about your health than any single number on a calendar ever could. If this video gave you something valuable today, something you can genuinely use in your own life or share with a parent, a grandparent, or a friend who could benefit from hearing it, please take a moment to hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need exactly this kind of clear, honest health information. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to Healthcare Insight, because we bring you carefully researched, easy to understand videos just like this one, focused entirely on helping you live a longer, healthier, more independent life as you age. Turn on notifications too, so you never miss a new video the moment it comes out. And if you know someone, a parent, a neighbor, a friend, who could use this information in their own life, please take a moment to share this video with them. Sometimes the most meaningful gift you can give someone is simply the right piece of information at the right time. Before you go, let me leave you with this. We've talked today about the physical and mental abilities that reveal how well you're truly aging. But there's another piece of this puzzle that most people completely overlook. Something that quietly affects your energy, your mood, your sleep, and even your risk for chronic disease. And most people don't find out about it until it's already causing problems. In our next video, we're going to break down exactly what that overlooked factor is, why it matters so much more than most people realize, and the simple, practical steps you can start taking to protect it starting today. You won't want to miss that one. So, make sure you're subscribed and notifications are turned on.